Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Overdose Denver. I've been making music for about 15 years now, and I have my own company called Underworld Instrumentals where I lease and sell instrumentals to people that need production. When I'm not doing anything, I really like to get into conspiracies and research secret societies. Today, I wanted to point out this year-old video by Joe Rogan. It's the second episode of a show called Joe Rogan Questions Everything. And the topic is chemtrails and weather control technology. And when I watched it, I was just like blown away by how hard Joe was trying to make people believe that the chemtrails weren't real. And it was nuts. I just have to show you guys this, man. So with that being said, we're going to get into Joe's very ultra mega super propaganda intro. This shit is nuts. So let's go ahead and press play and get started on this.
There are people that believe that the cloud-like trails you see in the sky behind jets are actually the government spraying evil chemicals, evil chemicals, evil chemicals. Before I get into how chemtrails supposedly control the weather, now has anybody identified one of these cargo aircrafts and found chemical containers inside? Has anybody found some sort of a distribution method, a spray nozzle, some sort of evidence to indicate that they're spraying things from planes?
It's very controlled. You cannot go on a flight line and take pictures. If you do, you'll be on the ground with an M16 in your back.
All right, so right here, Joe's asking about the inside of the planes. Has anyone ever seen the containers that hold the chemicals? Has anybody ever seen the nozzles that spray the chemicals? You know, so I found a video by another YouTube user, and I'm going to go ahead and show it. I'm going to play some of my music to it. But here is the inside of the chemtrail planes and some of the nozzles and different technology that's used to get this stuff going.
It's very controlled. It's very controlled. It's very controlled. It's very controlled.
I enjoyed talking to Kristen, but she's making some crazy claims. She's making some crazy claims. She's making some crazy claims. I have to admit that I am very skeptical when it comes to the idea of chemtrails. I have to admit that I am very skeptical when it comes to the idea of chemtrails. So you believe that all these crisscrossing patterns in the sky, these are government planes that are spraying something that's trying to control the weather. This is obviously an extraordinary claim. Do you feel like you have an extraordinary amount of evidence to back up this claim? Do you feel like you have an extraordinary amount of evidence to back up this claim?
So right here, Joe is just trying to make this dude look really dumb. He's saying that we need extraordinary evidence for such an extraordinary claim. This next piece, I tried to pull together the best evidence I could find on YouTube and other video sources, and I mixed it together a little bit, so let's check this out.
Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs that I know of today, and this is all public record, are available at any time with oversight, agricultural oversight or public oversight. These programs impact agriculture, and there are programs around the world. International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify our weather. So one of the things that I'm concerned about and that we need to address in the future is how these programs are impacting microclimates needed for our crops to survive.
There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the Senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not buying what Michael Murphy's selling. I don't think he knows enough about the weather to be talking about this, so I'm gonna talk to a guy who does. His name is Scott Stevens. He's a meteorologist, and he is a chemtrail believer.
Scott Stevens. Scott Stevens is a meteorologist that was interviewed for the show. After the show aired, Scott was upset and he made a video about how the producers of the show and Joe Rogan twisted and edited the show to suit their agenda. It was completely opposite of what Scott had in mind. So I put this clip of Scott in here to show you guys that this show was rigged in the first place. So let's get into that.
Chemtrail believer. First of all, man, thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing whatever information you know about this.
Hey everybody, you probably watched the Joe Rogan Questions Everything episode of the Sci-Fi Channel that aired this July 31st. They first contacted me back in early July. David Marcus was the senior producer who wrote me the initial email back then, and it was his goal, at least as conveyed to me, to get this topic into the mainstream, to make the debunkers eat their words, not his words, but essentially the concept of what this project was supposed to do. There was so much evidence, it was so clear, so self-evident, as he expressed it to me, that it was a slam dunk. Now, with a project that had that intent expressed to me up front, I wanted to be a part of. And so I let A. Smith & Company, who was a production house for this, have access to what I had. And my time was important, and so I made a very special day to me, April 16th, available. So I went out there and did the shooting with them. It's interesting because the producers seemed upfront, they were gung-ho, they were interested in what we had, getting that shared with the public. That information was important. And then on my file, on my computer, there was a little note, another file called Nibiru. And Joe Rogan saw that and began to question me along that line of thinking. It had nothing to do with chemtrails or geoengineering, nothing at all. It was along that line that Joe Rogan began to question me about Nibiru. And I saw his eyes. He was looking at me, and then he kind of did a little nod off to a story producer and then back to me. So that was the hit, in hindsight, that they were going to try to take me down with. And that became apparent as the afternoon of shooting with A. Smith & Company and Joe Rogan continued. Let's have a look at what they eventually shared with the public after assembling what was a beautiful cast of characters that I helped them put together. Billy Myers, Mick from Metabunk, I put them in contact with. They already had Michael Murphy. He gave them my contact information. So there were two of those critical people that they wouldn't have had if they hadn't have contacted me. Let's watch the episode.
So when you see these crisscross patterns across the sky, what do you believe is happening?
See this square in the clouds with the ice crystal weeping up.
And they did not let me answer that question. Joe posed the question, and now we've jump cut to another conversation. So in editing, what Joe has left, he's left a question dangling, cut. And now they've brought in my answer, my reply from a different question. How to mold the story in.
You believe that there's some sort of technology that's controlling the weather?
Sure. They want to claim climate change or carbon dioxide, but that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't wash. So there has to be some other delta, some other data, some other change that they're not considering. And in my opinion, it's zombie storms. Seriously.
Another edit. I would have never said zombie storms in that thing. In fact, in our discussions before I flew to Burbank, the producer kept bringing up zombie storms, and I'm like, WTF, what are you talking about with zombie storms? There is no such thing. And so they're editing to try to get that zombie storms, because if you're going to create this headline for a piece or a segment, you need something. Man versus man, or brother versus brother, or zombie storms, something that is of high interest or is sensational. And that's what they're doing with sound editing. Zombie storms? Seriously, that's all in editing. That's a lie. I never said it in that sequence.
HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Uh-oh, here we go. HARP. Every conspiracy theorist's ears just got a little bit bigger.
And my mocking of them just got a little bit bolder.
It's a top secret military installation that some believe is being used to weaponize the weather. Do you feel like HAARP has anything to do with these weather modifications?
Just like if you're going to build a house, you don't use one tool. So I think there are multiple tools, and HAARP is one of them. Whether it's the primary one or not, I don't know.
The strange weather patterns, the zombie storms, even though it's clear that something's going on, I'm not buying that chemtrails are causing all these things. I'm going to talk to a man next. His name is Mick West, and he runs a debunking website where he clearly and scientifically analyzes all of the problems with the conspiracy theories behind chemtrails.
All right, Mick West. Mick West owns a website called Metabunk, where he pretty much just debunks anything and everything. He seems to be good friends with Joe Rogan, as I've seen him on his show more than once, and I've seen them appear in quite a few pictures together. They both have the same agenda, and it's just awesome that he came on the show to say that fucking chemtrails are impossible. So let's check that out.
Are chemtrails real?
No, it's impossible to make a mile-wide trail by spraying powder. No, it's impossible to make a mile-wide trail by spraying powder.
What are your thoughts on weather manipulation in the first place? What are your thoughts on, like, HAARP?
HAARP. Well, there's really wild speculation about what HAARP could actually do. Like it could, create earthquakes and change the weather. But that's just basically wild speculation. Just because there's HAARP patents that say, you can cause earthquakes, it doesn't mean anything.
The fears of HAARP, you feel, are just based on ignorance.
Yeah.
All right. Nick Begich. I think that's how you say his name. Nick Begich. This guy, he's an expert on HAARP, and it's a weird part of the show because Joe just acts interested, and he kind of acts scared, and he just acts like he doesn't know what's going on. And that's pretty much the end of that. So let's listen to Nick explain to Joe what HAARP is.
Nick, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Tell me about HAARP. It's an array.
A field of antennas. Right
How
now,
many are in the
180.
field? 180.
180, they're about 60 feet tall, and then they have a cross diapole. That's about 45 feet by 45 feet. And these are located not just in Alaska. Now we have them across Canada and Europe, and then the old transmitters in the former Soviet Union, and the Chinese talking about developing their own.
Should I be terrified?
Absolutely. In fact, one that we've been following for a number of years now, biggest radio frequency transmitter ever developed in the world. Designed initially by the Air Force and Navy. Now it's run by DARPA, which does some of the more dark side of military research for weapons applications.
Nick is now telling me that HAARP is being run by DARPA. They're the guys who invent all sorts of crazy weapons that scare the out of you when you go online. And now they have the power to manipulate the weather. What do you think they're doing?
What it's doing is it's literally heating up the ionosphere, which is about 30 miles above the Earth's surface, and then it pushes it out. So what happens then is the pressure systems in that region change, and jet streams moving in that area create a huge downstream effect, and one that cannot be accurately predicted.
So affecting something in one part of the world could potentially affect something on the other side.
Yes. So you may solve, say, a weather anomaly in one place, create 10 others that are uncontrollable. With electromagnetic waves, we could affect earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and weather. And to trigger an earthquake, you basically have energy tied up in a fault zone. But if you could create a resonance signal that allowed that energy to release at a specific point in time, at a specific place, you could then direct it as a weapon. HAARP on a gross scale is really affecting geophysical systems, all right? And so there's sound associated with like a sonic event.
They can make some sort of a sky quake with HAARP.
Yeah, these things are being reported around the world right now.
All right, the reports. I put together a little clip with the crazy apocalyptic sounding noises that people have been hearing, and another clip with strange weather. Now, this is just a small piece of the strange weather. I mean, there's a guy on YouTube named Jason A, and they call him Fear Porn, but he has the craziest videos on weather footage. I mean, he will make you think that we're all about to die tomorrow. That's why they call him Mr. Fear Porn. But nonetheless, he's got some great compilations of weather. So check him out, Jason A.
I invite you to listen carefully to the sounds you are about to hear. The sounds certainly get your attention, and they're making headlines all over the world.
Tonight, investigators are trying to solve a bizarre mystery.
Strange noises heard around the world the last few weeks.
Hoje, Marcelo Espanha, boa noite para você. Conta melhor essa história pra gente.
A loud, strange noise early this morning woke up families in St. Paul.
Some people describe them as trumpets. Others called it a long hum or even booms, like this recording in Tallahassee, Florida, back in 2011.
Don't go out there. You see anything?
The sound lasted nearly an hour.
I know it's coming from there somewhere.
The mysterious sounds were also captured on national TV during a Tampa Bay Rays baseball game.
And the bunt is foul. The count is 1-1.
Now what could that possibly be? Somebody shut the door.
It sounds supernatural.
So what is everyone hearing? There have been many theories: earthquakes, electromagnetic activity, solar activity, secret government projects.
Washed out roads, stranded cars, and even flooded homes. Those are just some of the problems caused by last night's heavy rains in southern New Mexico.
It's a quick snapshot of Roswell's stormy weather. The most rainfall the city has seen in more than 60 years.
This is one last night, just east of us. And this was that was a picture every second.
Daniel Fuller caught part of the storm on his GoPro.
I've lived here about 20 years, and I have never seen flooding like this before.
And this photo shows more flooding in Roswell. The water is up to the doors of those cars.
How long have you all lived here?
Oh, 12 years.
Have you ever seen flooding like this?
Not like this, no.
Southeast Texas is at risk for more flooding this morning after violent storms killed at least one person. Thunderstorms unleashed heavy hail in San Antonio Tuesday. Cars took a beating.
In Houston, a second straight day of drenching rain flooded the downtown area. Winds hit 60 miles an hour. The floodwaters are creating unusual dangers.
The rain pounded St. James Parish for quite some time today, too, causing widespread flooding there.
Caskets from the cemetery on Belrose Lane floating away from their resting places.
The rain started before dawn. Severe storms that dumped a deluge on St. James Parish. Drainage ditches overflowed, streets flooded. But the bigger story is that over 60 homes and businesses have been flooded. There was so much rain it quickly overwhelmed the drainage system. Parish residents, sheriff's deputies, even the parish president all said the same thing. They've never seen anything like this.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with Joe's propaganda outro to the show. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and leave negative comments and dislike my video. I don't give a fuck.
Here's what I learned on my journey. What people are calling chemtrails are not the government spraying evil chemicals on you. They look like clouds because they are clouds. They look like clouds because they are clouds. The HAARP thing is a bit more confusing. It's terrifying when you're too dumb to know who's stupid. And unfortunately, that's where I find myself. Too dumb to know who's stupid. That's where I find myself. And the only people who really know are the people that are working at HAARP. And none of them are talking. And I wouldn't talk either. And I wouldn't talk either. And I wouldn't talk either. And I wouldn't talk either.